Well, this is going to be a little bit different episode. We're cross-pollinating between Let's Talk Fortitude and the Shelter Hole in this episode. I am extremely honored to have my next guest, JJ, to be here, who was my prayer partner when I came down for the Whites Ferry Road men's retreat about a year and a half ago. One of those, I'll never forget that when he called, one of the first things he said to me is, when I saw your name, I knew that I was supposed to have your name. And it has been an amazing relationship since that phone call when you first called me. But anyway, we're at JJ's ranch. Big, huge thank you to you, Elizabeth, for putting us up and letting us bunk here. This place is amazing. And JJ is a veteran as well as has an extreme ministry here for youth and adults. It's not just teens. I thought it was, but I have learned so much about you and what you do here in the last day and a half, and it's awesome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tee JJ up and let you roll with it, brother. And if I feel like I need to interject, I will. But if I'm quiet, don't take that as a bad sign. There's no time limits. You can walk home from here, so you're good.
Yeah, that's
right.
And
Chad and I can walk to the bunkhouse, so we got plenty of deer sausage and cookies, Coca-Cola and coffee. What more could you ask for? Elizabeth's got a nice warm blanket in the recliner, and Chad, I don't know what he's doing back there laughing at me. But I'm going to tee you up, and let's go. But what I do want to ask you is, are you local to, is this your home? And if it's not, what kind of brought you here to start out with? And what was your childhood like?
Yeah. So, yeah, I am local, you know. I grew up in this parish, which is just like a county, but in Louisiana we call them parishes. And our hub town is called Monroe, and there's Monroe and West Monroe, they're over there, and then a little town north of there is called Sterlington. It's only about 9 miles north, something along those lines. But you know, I wasn't born. I was born in Austin, Texas, and you know, just my dad was a Pacific Islander that from Guam, and he made his way to Hawaii and then to California, and went to chef school. Come down to made his way down to around fairly close to Fort Polk. To Fort Hood, and my uncle was in the army there, but he was a chef, and so he worked around, you know, within driving distance, you know, just because family was there, and he met my mother over there, and just, you know, around Lufkin and all that area, and my mother was from Arkansas, a place called Raydale, which is close to Bayou Mito and south of Stuttgart, and all those are small places, you know. And she was she made her way and was over in around East Texas, you know, and East Central Texas, and they met, and he was a general manager of a Mexican food restaurant that had several chains, and they had one up here, and so he made his way up here, and we landed in Monroe, you know. And man, it was during those days, you know, and it's real important, you know, we start talking about stories and you know, when that we end up knowing each other, right? So we had to go back to the family of origin, you know, to see, you know, what happened, you know. Where did we land? Like, why are we sitting in these chairs here today?
Exactly.
At this ranch, you know, how did we land here? Well, we had to go back to the beginning, right? So anyway, we end up here in Monroe, and they had started a little school, and the elementary school was at I'm liable to get emotional about some of this stuff, and I'm not even sure why, but
okay, if that happens,
yeah,
I just stay silent You just
Yeah.
do what you
Oh, I'm
gotta
good
do
to go.
Okay,
yeah, I don't
you're
mind.
good.
I don't
No,
mind.
no, that's
I don't
why I let
mind.
you know
it.
it's all good.
You know, that's right. So, but the elementary school was at a church in Monroe, and the high school was at a church in West Monroe called Whites Ferry Road, and the school is called Watchdog Christian, and eventually they end up building a school out on 165 going towards Sterlington, where I ended up kind of spending my high school years. But anyway, we moved here. Everything's going pretty good, man. My dad was part of my life a whole lot during those days, you know, and being from the Pacific Islander society, you know, it's you know, it's not odd for a young boy to be taking care of you know, just picking up a baby or something like that. Like, it's just not you know, they don't mind showing love and stuff like that. All right, so it's you know, and the extended family's considered close. Like, so my first cousins are like we call brother and sister. You know, that's just kind of the way that it goes there. And so anyway, my dad showed a lot of affection and all that kind of stuff, you know, when I was young, growing up, and so it was real close, man. And whenever they got married, my mother, she had 5 kids, you know, and she started out young, you know, and I don't know if it was just that my grandmother was, you know, I kind of questioned sometimes, like, we called her Gran. I said, you know, what was she doing? You know, what was she thinking? You know, but she had gotten married young, and I think she had her first kid whenever she was 16. And anyway, so that and you know, they grew up that kind of in a pretty rough way, you know. Anyway, my mind kind of goes back to this. My grandfather was and I hate to be bouncing around like this, but my grandfather was a fisherman on the Arkansas River and a trapper, and then they picked cotton with their hands, and you know, eventually then she ended up down, I guess through work or whatnot, just trying to getting down to where she met my dad.
Right.
And anyway, so that whenever they got married, he loved her, and you know, brought on those kids, you know, and then I came along, and so anyway, eventually we end up over here, and I started into that school, and I think this was kind of a deal where I started off a little bit young, you know, in kindergarten, but you know, my mama was pretty focused on the idea that to raise your children up in the way that they should go, and so she would read, you know, the Bible book stories, the big picture book Bible, you know, and we'd go through all the stories, right? And man, I remember just loving Jesus, you know. Man, he was the guy, you know. And anyway, so we get in. I roll into about the 4th grade or so, and then all of a sudden, you know, the innocence was there. And then all of a sudden, there's going to be a divorce, you know. And man, it kind of flipped my world upside down, you know. And all during that time, there was a, you know, what I know now, like my dad just kind of he just started fading out, you know. And what I didn't know at the time, all I knew was he wasn't there, you know, and I didn't understand fully why. And what I did know at the time was that my dad, you know, he was dealing with the pain of all this stuff, because it's painful, you know, whether you no, regardless of who's you know, what has the circumstances that has happened, who's to blame or whatever that is, you know. And listen, I'm talking about this, and my parents showed up, and they did the best they could with what they had. And what we show up with is what we was taught, what we picked up along the way,
Right.
and then what we got lucky at. You know what I'm saying? So you know, they were doing the best they could do with what they had, and as far as parenting wise, you know, and there was no doubt that I was loved, you know, but I just didn't understand the whole. All of a sudden, Daddy wasn't there, you know, and so even at the same time, I stopped going to Ouachita Christian, the school, and I changed schools. We moved, you know, and Daddy wasn't there, you know. And so now I'm at a new school, get bullied a little bit, and I got you know, I had kind of a problem with bullies later in life, you know what I'm saying? And so my mother at the time was like she was trying to deal with her pain, you know, and all the disruption of life and how it was happening. And so she was reaching out to her aunt, you know, her mom's sister. And we would go up to South Arkansas, you know, a couple hours away, you know, and we'd go up there, and she would, you know, be around her aunt and just try to, you know, get okay, you know, emotional support and all that. And well, I had a relative up there that during this time, you know, sexually abused me. You know, there was some sexual assault. It was more than once, and you know, man, I was just kind of trying to figure. I knew it wasn't right, you know, and everything else, but I was worried about my mom emotionally, you know, because if I said something about this, it was going to disrupt that. She was going to lose her emotional support, right? And then the other thing, I was kind of scared, you know. I didn't know how to go about this, you know. And then of course my daddy wasn't there, you know, and so I didn't say anything, you know. And now, Grant, look, I'm 8 years old, right? You know, 8, 9 years old, thinking like this. All right. Now, there's no way that I was mature enough or had the emotional or mental capacity to be able to make a decision like that.
Absolutely.
You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
And, you know, I'm trying to protect mama, you know. So anyway, time's kind of starting to pass on a little bit, and my mother starts working at a General Motors. You know, they had a plant here a long time ago, and well, she goes to college, well, finishes high school, and then starts going to college, and during the day, and so she works at night, graveyard. And so during those graveyard shifts, you know, I'd be at the house alone. Because all those other kids, my half brothers and everything, like they all were older, you know. And man, I would be laying there at night before she'd leave, and I'd have one of those. I'd have sleep with my Bible and a 20 gauge shotgun, single barrel, loaded and cocked. All right, so that Bible, you know, that's understandable, right? Now that shotgun was just in case Jesus didn't show up quick enough. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And so early in the game, I had to, you know,
that was a security blanket.
Yeah, you know, I mean, look, you know, if it was going to happen, then I was going to at least be ready just in case, you know. But so there's a dynamic there that just in that thought, right? And so I began to make an agreement with something that wasn't true, you know, because my dad had not been, you know, like he wasn't there whenever I was sexually assaulted and that stuff was going on. And then, and he just kind of disappeared, you know, he faded out, you know, in my life.
Right.
So somewhere in my mind, right, I started thinking, well, you know, God's not going to take care of me. You know, I was kind of transferring this idea of that my dad wasn't there. Now God's not going to show up, so I'm going to take care of myself, right? So I remember being there, laying down at night there, and just being scared, you know. And my body just, I remember having, shaken, being just terrified, and man, I started getting a real, at some point during that time, I started to get a real strange relationship with fear, and my thinking was, I guess, was that because it used to really, I'd get mad at myself about the fear, and so I could step outside, and I said, well, I'm going to get in this other lane. I'm just going to go next to it. So I'm going to operate while this fear is going on. Even though the fear is there, I'm going to step out of that lane, and I'm going to get over here, and just parallel this fear, and then I would operate in that realm. The problem with that is that, when you get on another lane, eventually you're going to come into some oncoming traffic, right?
Exactly.
And so, anyway, high school's coming around, I'm kind of going up through there, and not real. I'm drinking a little bit, as a pretty good bit. I was looking forward to the drinking, experimenting a little bit with some drugs, and having a lot of, as much sex as I can muster up and find, and so there's another idea there also, a couple ideas that I started, some agreements that I had started making. All right, so one, God wasn't going to take care of me, okay? The second one is that I had a skewed idea about what it would look like for to be a man, right? Now let me back up real quick. Just before high school, right? My mom takes me to my uncle's house, and look, man, my uncle was something. I mean, he was rough and tough, and he was a cowboy, and man, he taught me how to coon hunt and shoot deer at night. I mean, and he would make me ride everything. And if it'd buck, he'd want me on it. He's one of them cats you wouldn't tell no to. If you said no, he'd put you over there on the back of something. And so anyway, and man, I loved him. And he taught me a lot, answered a lot of questions about masculine questions I needed answered, and he helped me answer some of those questions, However, I received a wound from that time with him, and that was that he had a girlfriend at the time, and man, the girlfriend had some daughters, and one of them was a little bit older than me, and she wanted to have sex one weekend when they came over, and man, I didn't know what to do with this girl, and I was scared of her, I was scared. I said, no, man, so I said no. Well, somehow or another, my uncle found out about that, that I had said no, and man, he told me, he said, look, he said, if she propositions you again, and I found out you said no, I'm gonna give you a whipping, And look, one of those whippings, I saw him whip my cousin one time, and man, I didn't want nothing to do with that deal. That was a bad deal. You didn't want no whipping from him. And I wanted that approval. I wanted some, that affirmation from him. It meant something to me. And so the next time they came, she did the same thing, and I took her up on her offer. And of course, after that, it turned into a deal. So there I was trying to prove this idea that this must be what it looks like to be a man.
Right.
And there's the other part of that is I was hiding. Like if I had sex with these girls, I was proving that no one would find out about the secret, the thing that happened to me. So those are some things that I don't. At the time, I wasn't thinking, hey, I'm going to try to hide this thing. Like this is stuff that was revealed well later, as far as like, here's what was going on during those days, Now look, we start getting back into that stuff, and you get back into some of these old wounds and things like that, which is necessary. Mm-hmm. Okay, we need to go back in and revisit these wounds so we can be whole. And so it's necessary to do that, whatever that looks like. And if we don't know, then we should pray for God's revelation of that.
Exactly. I'm with you.
Because He wants us to be healed. He wants us to be whole, and He wants us to be free. We can be walking around hearing, like you're driving in your truck and you hear some rattle. Well, we were walking around with chains on and we hear this rattle, but we don't know where it's coming from. We need to start asking, hey, where are these wounds at? And show me what's in, because those wounds and all that chain rattling, it comes in between us and God.
Yes.
And so anyway, I'd kind of roll into high school, and man, there's, along with some of that shame and things like that, there's an idea that, when I went to change schools, during that time, it was like, it seemed as if, and all I can remember is that everybody that I knew, all of my friends and even some that weren't my friends, like everybody's parents were still together. Like I was the only kid, at least I thought this, that I was the only kid that had divorced parents. So I'm up in this little small town over there living with my mama, and everybody else's dad is there. And, God dropped some people in, some friends, dads stepped in some places. Man, that just, they took me hunting. They did some of these things with me, and my buddy, and man, just really filled in some places that I didn't realize it was happening, but God was dropping people in to fill needs that I had, and so I started getting into high school, and I wasn't, I played basketball and football, and I didn't care for baseball too much, but and I did fair, I did all right. I was an average guy, but I knew I wasn't going to play college ball anywhere or anything, and there was an idea, man, it just wasn't good enough. There was this idea that I had, and I just felt like I wasn't enough, and I had gone during high school. I'd gone back to Guam and Hawaii and spent some time, back there, in the Pacific. And man, while I was in high school, one of my best friends' dad was a Korean Marine, and man, he was a kind and gentle man, and he knew, but there was a here's the deal. I knew that Mr. Hemphill was dangerous. Like he still had it in him, but he was never abusive or never, any of that kind of stuff. I trusted him,
Right.
and he just had that about him, and you just knew it was still there. I remember one time I'd gone down, and I don't know, I think I'd gone down to this way down in on this bayou, and I was coming up out of there. I must have been down there making out with some old girlfriend or something, and come out. My girlfriend's here right now. Well, my wife over here. But anyway, I come up from out of there, and there was some deer on the road, and I said, "Here we go," and I killed a couple of deer, and threw them in the back of that truck. And The only place I knew was to go over to my buddy's house, and there, and Mr. Tommy was over there, and we cleaned them deer at night, and showed up over at night. But that was the I needed help, and but anyway, I had that, and then at the same time, the eldest son was in the Marine Corps at the time, and now we're in high school now, and man, the reports back from him, man, he was in Japan, and he was out there, and he'd come home on leave, and man, and I'd be listening in, I'd ask him some questions, and so when I graduated, I went to college just at Northeast for just for a little bit, and man, just long enough to get put on academic probation, But I had already made up my mind, I didn't really have a plan, and I said, man, look, I'm too big for this town, and I'm out of here, and man, I found my home amongst the America's misfits and outcasts. I stood on the yellow. I stood on the yellow set of footprints, and man, it saved my life. And I wasn't the only kid that had divorced parents. You know what I'm saying? I mean, everybody was trying to find something, and they were finding a bigger purpose, something bigger than them in the Marine Corps. And so, man, the thing about the Marine Corps is that I excelled there, and I was real good at being a Marine.
Did you go through Parris Island or RTC San Diego?
I went through San Diego.
I went through San Diego in the Navy.
Yeah.
And so everybody knows, the Marine Corps and Navy boot camps are back to back. And you've got the airport, San Diego International Airport on one side. Was that over on your all side or was that on our side? I can't remember. Then you had the bay on one side. There was no way of getting out of there.
No.
You either had to get on an airplane and landing gear and try to get out of there, or you had to try to swim your way, or I don't know. There was no way out.
Yeah, I know that there's at some place, there's some point you can see, the Navy's boot camp over there somewhere. But I never saw any.
I don't think we ever saw
any sailors or anything. The only thing that you could see was, there's a bunch of at MCRD San Diego. There's a bunch of. It just seems like it's all warehouses, on one side, and then you've got the parade deck. And
all your barracks,
the conference course, and all that stuff. And then you got the fence where the airport's over there, and then way up in the mountains on the side of the mountain, you can see the old town San Diego up there, and it kind of wraps around. But you don't really, everything's so focused right there, like you're like you're on another planet, And you didn't want to get caught looking at them airplanes, If you looked at them airplanes that drill instructor was doing, he's going to be knee deep in you. You're going to be in the pit, and you're going to be thrashing for sure. So after it wasn't too long after, I was in the Marine Corps just for not too long, and I had met a friend of mine's. His cousin, and she was, she was older than me, pretty good looking blonde from Phoenix, or around Phoenix, Mesa, and wherever she was from over there, right around Phoenix, and anyway, we kind of dated a little bit long distance, and man, I figured out that I was going to have to let her know, hey, listen, I'm fixing to have to leave and go over to somewhere. I'm not exactly sure. I said, but I don't know when I'm coming back, and I'm going to leave in about 48 hours. And well, she had some news of her own, and she was pregnant, and it wasn't that ship date, we didn't end up not leaving, and we ended up, it got pushed back a little bit, and so I got married, and whenever I went to, and it turned out to be, Desert Storm, and spent some time there, and I come back about 9 months or so later, and I wasn't back a couple weeks, and baby girl was born, and it wasn't long after that we found out that she had a heart problem, had a hole in her heart, and there's a valve that the wall didn't grow through there, so they were going to have to go in there and patch that up, and so man, we went and had this surgery done, at over in Phoenix, actually, and you talking about a helpless feeling, there was and powerless, really, is actually the word I'd use, and she had the surgery went fine, but she was there in intensive care, and her body was retaining fluids, and she was having some seizures and everything. She was just all, swollen up, and it was hard to look at, and so, but she ends up, and and I started doing some bargaining, with God, and said, listen, I knew you a little bit back whenever I was a kid, and and then in high school, I was off and on, I was hot and cold and all that stuff. But listen, let's do a deal here, and well, she recovered, and she ended up having having her own little girl about 18 months ago or so, something like that. Just crossed a year and some change, and but she ended up, not to get too far into that part, but she ended up, being a casualty of just some deployments and stuff like that too, but I talked about this a little bit a couple weeks ago to a group of men, and I had this idea about the way that wartime was going to be, and I had this idea that it was going to be a little bit more like those cats back in World War II, and we were going to go off and fight these bad guys, and we were going to come back, and it was just going to be there's glamorous, ticker tape and all that stuff. We're going to ride down through the big road there in New York City, and it's going to be cool. Chicks are going to be jumping all over us and that kind of thing. And well, it was we did, it wasn't exactly that, And look, Desert Storm and all that stuff, it was a short-lived deal, but I'll tell you that one of the things I was thinking about the other day, a couple of weeks ago, was when the Republican Guard, was trying to make an exit out of there, and we were able to, we hammered down on them pretty good on the road north out of Kuwait, and they looted and just were stealing stuff. I mean they had window units and all, just a bunch of thugs. They were stealing window units and air conditioners and freezers and all kinds of stuff. I mean, they had just stolen all kinds of stuff and was headed out, and man, it was just a turkey shoot. I mean, we hammered down, and it was tough because they had already lit some oil wells, and all that stuff was burning and stuff. If you remember all that, how that kind of went down.
I remember well.
Yeah, and so well, for a while, man, like you'd fly around there and you could smell it. You know, it was pretty ugly. But I remembered some specific vehicles, you know, that we'd you know, that we shut down, and it was interesting because, you know, several years later, I'm taking a drive up from Kuwait going to Iraq, and looking over, and there are some specific vehicles that I remember pretty well. You know, they're not all there, but there were some. You know, and boy, for a minute, I mean, it was pretty weird. You know, coming back up through there, kind of like. Not really in the sense of, but I remembered, you know, and it was pretty fresh still. So that was an interesting deal coming back up through there, and then seeing, and specifically a couple of vehicles I felt like I remembered exactly, like I remember that vehicle. You know, of course it didn't look anything the same, but the way it was sitting on the road, and I was picturing it from the air, you know. But anyway, I come back, and man, you know, she had some idea. You know, I had made some. She had some ideas about the way things were going to go, and I did. I'd made some pretty strong commitments to myself. You know, when you deploy, and man, if you're going to be honest and make some promises to yourself or whatever, you're going to do it in combat. You know what I mean? I mean, you're sitting over there in the desert, and you're like, hey, man, you know, I'm going to be better at that, you know. And, you know, I really meant some of that stuff the very first time. You know, I really meant it, you know. And but I came back, man, and she didn't think that way, and I was pretty disillusioned. And, of course, things didn't work out. I deployed and went on a ship for a little while, and you know, things were rocky when I got back. But then when I deployed and went on that ship, I was that was going to wrap it up right there. That just must seal the deal, and that just happened to be the beginning of. I was on the USS Tarawa, and that was in the beginning of Somalia.
No way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You were on the Tarawa?
Mm-hmm.
I got a story I'll tell you. Not now, but I've got a story about the Tarawa.
Yeah.
I've been on the Tarawa.
Yeah. I had a good time.
So it's a very small world, man. Who would have ever known?
Yeah. So, but anyway, and then of course, you know, we did some stuff in Somalia in the early days, and did some things there, and that's kind of where my career just kind of kicked off, you know, and I started, you know, we did a few things with some in the intelligence areas and stuff like that, and you know, and that was just by request. You know, they get what everybody, right. Those guys get what they want, and you know, you build some relationships, and then they start asking for you, you know, and we had some pretty ballsy, you know, pilots and stuff like that. And of course, you know, it was we did well with on some missions there, and anyway, whenever all that was done, you know, I come back, and when I returned back, it was I come back to an empty apartment.
Really?
She was gone, and she went home to Mama, and man, I tried to it was a long drawn out thing. It was tough, man.
Now JJ, at that time, there still wasn't email like there is now either, right?
No.
If you wanted to call home, you had to go to a payphone and on the beach somewhere and call home. There was no getting on a computer on the ship or Skype.
That's right.
Anything.
There wasn't any of that.
No, okay.
Mm-mm. Yeah.
Just to say.
Yeah, you had to go. That's right.
So when you got home, it was a surprise. It's not like she sent you an email or you Skyped and Now, she may have sent you a letter, but you didn't,
Yeah.
it wasn't through email.
Yeah, and that letter would have been way late.
Way late.
Like
Yeah,
there would have been,
yeah.
you know,
There'd
your
been
apartment.
mold growing in the
That's right.
refrigerator.
Your apartment would have been rented out by by somebody by the time you got that letter. Like
Yeah, and all your goods is down at the Goodwill store where they just
yeah,
drop them
that's
off.
right. Yeah, they got going to the pawn shop. You know, but yeah, that's right. Like so, we would, you know, I think the first sign of trouble. I ended up I was in Hong Kong, and I called home to talk to my mama, and she said, "Hey, things ain't good. You need to call and figure out what's going on." You know, and anyway, yeah, that's right, because I mean, you would be off, you know, and it just wasn't like that. Well, Skype was something. That was all right, you know.
I didn't have Skype. We numbered our letters.
Yeah, you know. Well, and that's one of those things that we lost, you know, since all this has happened, you know, all this technology and everything. Nobody picks up a pen. There's no, you know, we've lost that, and so when it comes time to just, you know, that handwriting's personal.
Yeah.
You know, if you write that, I mean, you're giving something. You know, you're giving something away. You know, if you read a text or an email, well, that's something completely. There's nothing to that. There's nothing personal there. You know, a friend of mine, Corey, was talking about this, and he'll at some point, if you get a chance to talk to him, and he brought up this idea, talking about this friend of his that had passed away, and anyway, wrote notes in his Bible, you know, wrote notes and put dates and real things like that. But you know, it was interesting that you know, when he said that, and you know, of course, and I've always been on this thing about this letter writing and stuff like that that we need to get that back, and some of the things that we're doing here or we're going to be doing here is bring some of that back, you know. But anyway, I ended up getting divorced from this woman, and I was trying to the relationship with my daughter was, man, it was just I was far away, and look, this is what it was. You know, this is not saying, hey, if this is all her or anything. You know,
right. No,
you know what I'm saying? I mean,
yeah,
it just is what it was, and things were difficult to see her. You know, and you know, man, when people are hurt and you know all this is going on, people getting divorced and stuff, people are hurt. You know, things didn't go how they were supposed to, no matter what that looks like. You know, they just didn't go well, and so you know, it was difficult to see her, and but with training and deploying and stuff like that, you know, I should have tried harder, you know, and I was just focused in on, you know, being a Marine, really, you know, and then everything else that I started doing, you know, and but I started drinking a lot, you know, and when I wasn't drinking or working, you know, I was, you know, of course, trying to change the way I felt with sex and, you know, sex and alcohol when I could, and then when I would train and run and stuff like that, you know, I'd really try to, you know, make sure I was in pain, you know, and which is an interesting thing, you know. If I can feel this pain, this physical pain. I won't have this emotional pain,
right.
you know, and I could do some things, but I think the thing that strikes me now with all that is just that man, you know, just trying so hard not to feel. You know, didn't want to feel that pain, you know, and I could do well on my professional life, but personally it was just a train wreck, you know, that's to say the least, you know. So anyway, like, you know, time is moving on, and I changed. I ended up having a small break in service I changed over to after that little break right there, you know, I said, man, I just need to. I can't really function. I wasn't functioning well outside, you know. And I said, man, I'd gotten a phone call and said, hey, man, you want to come to work? You know, first of all, the question was, how's it going out there? You know, of course, I had some choice words to say about that because I knew they knew how it was going. You know, and my adjustment, you know, there was no kind of.
There was no assimilation classes back to the civilian life back then.
No.
I know whenever I got there wasn't anything. They give you your discharge paper, said see you later.
Yeah.
You had your exit physical, and that was it.
You know, and I don't even know. Honestly, I don't even know why I got out. You know, I couldn't tell. I mean, there was guys that were like, "You're not getting out," and I just don't. I don't know why I didn't. You know, and I think at one point I'd put an application in for EOD and to go to EOD school, and I got all of it was approved and everything else, but they ran out of seats, and I was like, man, you know, and just something happened during that time, and it was after Somalia and stuff like that, and so I was just a little bit disillusioned with some things, and anyway, so I ended up, you know, changing over to the Army, and man, just started doing some intel stuff. And, you know, that stuff ended up, you know, taking me, you know, of course, our most recent, you know, the last, all, you know, Iraq and Afghanistan. And then I did a lot of stuff in the Southern Hemisphere of the Americas, you know. And, man, I just, during that time, my personal life was just, you know, shattered, you know. I met another girl, and ended up getting married, and man, my walk with Jesus, it was sparked at that time, you know, and I was just kind of on and off, but man, there was a kind of a spike in my relationship, if you will, but. You know, so I'm careful with this, or not careful. It's just that I wasn't 100% in, you know, and the thing that in all of this time, whenever on the spiritual side and what I was happening was, it just seemed as if that. Well, I know for a fact I wasn't getting discipled, you know, and I would make a commitment, and then man, something would, you know, just fade out, you know. I just didn't have community, you know. And I get married. My relationship with my daughter is basically at this point non-existent. And we have a son. And man, he was. I was going to do it different, you know, and I was a good dad, you know, a good papa, you know, they call me Papa. And but it's coming up on, I'm coming up on this last deployment, you know, you know, and one of the things that happens is we get pregnant again. She has a little girl, and our marriage is just not doing well. You know, it's not Christ-centered. I mean, Jesus is in the beginning, he was there. You know, we were trying to get some things, but I wasn't getting discipled, and man, I just kind of started fading off. Also, during that time, I felt like, man, I've got this calling, you know, in my life, you know, and I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how to work that out, you know. I just thought, well, maybe I need to be a preacher, you know. And so I was with a certain denomination at that time, and it's one I'd grown up in. And I thought, well, I'll just go to those guys and, you know, see what it looks like. And they they basically told me this, that, well, if you've been divorced, you're not going to be a candidate, you know. And so, man, let me tell you something. So my question to that is, well, is the blood not enough or not? Like a divorce, really? You don't know the rest of the stuff, you know. I mean, that's nothing.
Yeah.
You know. That's like, Mickey Mouse stuff, you know.
That's what my grandmother would say, cut your nose off in spite of your face.
Yeah, you know. So I had some hurt behind that, you know.
I'm with you, brother. I'm with you.
But, there's a difference there, and I'm glad that happened too, because let me just tell you, that's not what the calling was, you know. I know that now, you know, and I learned plenty about relationship versus religion, you know, in that event. But it certainly, I was very pissed off by that, you know, and so during this time, man, I'm starting to drink, coming up on this next deployment, and then and there's some shifts and stuff that's going on at work, and right before that last deployment, things weren't going good, and I said, well, if things are, I go on this deployment, I'll have time when I come back and to deal with all this, you know. I'll be retired, and I'll be able to fix it then, you know. And man, I deployed, and when I come back, it was just horrible, you know. And man, I was just, what happened, what the only thing I can attribute this to so we hadn't talked at all about PTSD or anything. So come to find out, you know, like the PTSD deal has grown, right? It didn't got full grown, got hair on it, right? You know, didn't have any smooth skin, had hair on it. And I had an idea about that, you know, just with what was happening, you know, but man, just some of the frustrations and stuff that come along with it, and just, man, I was just kind of like, look, man, if I can't sleep, and then when I do sleep, I'm having some bad dreams and stuff like that, and it's just, I'm just, you know, I don't know what to do, you know, so I just started trying to self-medicate, you know, and so I'm drinking, I'm starting to use drugs and stuff, you know, and it's for about a 2 years straight, and just under 2 years, you know, man, I was just really trying to die, I guess, you know. I knew I didn't, you know, I wasn't trying to commit suicide, but I just didn't care, you know. And but man, I love them kids, you know, but that doesn't have anything to do with addiction, you know. It doesn't matter who you love, you know. That addiction's number one.
Yep.
You know, and so there was, man, I was using, you know, some amphetamines and cocaine, and drinking, you know, and using people, you know, women and stuff like that. Man, everything was just upside down, you know, and none of it, you know, it works until it doesn't, and then when it doesn't, it's horrible, you know, and so none of it's working at this point, and everything's kind of flipped upside down, and I start going to my pastor over at we was over in West Monroe at the time, and just kind of going over there a little bit. I had stayed in touch with him while I was deployed, and he was trying to, I guess, what he's really trying to do is trying to disciple me, you know, but I didn't fully see it, you know. And when I get back, he's like, listen, you need to go over there and to the Mentor's Clinic over in Dallas, you know. And he noticed some stuff. We had gone, and, you know, of course, I don't play golf, but if he went and played golf, I'd go ride with him, you know.
You're right.
I'd drive him a little bit or something, but, you know, just he noticed some stuff. He said, man, you just this stuff has got you eaten up, you know, and just, you know, my brain wasn't quite functioning right, and you know, just been around some explosions and stuff like that, and so he said, listen, just go over there and see Dr. Mentorth over at the Mentorth Clinic in Dallas. And so I'll go over there and start getting treated, you know. And man, he's like, listen, you know, so he's going over some stuff. This guy's just a, you know, really smart cat, you know, and I liked him a bunch, you know. And we were able to, he suggested that I go to his, had some properties, and he's like, listen, if you go over there, I can treat you, and we can spend some intensive, you know, therapy and treatment, you know, for, you know, every day. And I kind of gaffed it off. I was like, no, you know, yeah, I'll think about it, you know, and he was like, okay, so just, you know, so I went and saw him a few more times just from here. And man, things were starting to catch up on me, you know, and at the house, you know, some stuff starting to get revealed, you know, and finally I'm just like, man, you know what? It's kind of starting to blow up. I'll go up there, you know. So on my way up, he had a ranch up in northern Arkansas and up in the mountains, and I was like, all right, I was at foothills anyway, you know, but I said, well, I'll go up there, you know. And so what had happened, you know, during those years when I was deploying and stuff like that, I figured out that I could deploy and run away, you know, from my personal problems. And man, I just wanted to be in that chaos, you know, and I just felt at home there, you know, and I could function better there than I could when everything's quiet, you know. It's just too quiet. And so I start on my way up there. Man, while I'm on the way up there, things just start blowing up down here and everything. And so I basically chunked my phone and made a detour, went to my family's farm, you know, over around Texarkana, and I went way back up in there and I had some drugs where I picked some up while I was there, and just stayed up for a couple of days, and things got real strange, you know. And
yeah, about 3 days into it, I can see it getting
yeah, you know. And so anyway, my cousin came in, and he's like, listen, man, you need to go on up there, you know. And so I said, all right. And so I took off. I went up there, ended up there, and you know, had those sessions with Dr. Mentorth, and it kind of came out that I was using drugs and stuff down here, because at that point, like, my wife didn't know, you know, and I don't really know why she didn't, because it was all over the place. I mean, it was just, you should have, but she didn't, you know. She's pretty busy with her job and stuff like that too. And so I get up there, and man, I'm just trying to change. You know, I'm up there. I'm doing some therapy, doing some work, and man, it kind of gets to a point, and I get up there, and nothing's working. You know, I start hiking and humping around the mountains, hills. You know, really trying to spur some physical pain. You know, and man, one day up there, I just was pushing really hard and just trying to get some kind of feeling, you know, something to take away whatever this was, that I was feeling emotionally, you know. And but no matter how hard I pushed it, man, I just couldn't, you know, I couldn't get enough pain to take that away. You know, like physical pain to take this emotional pain away.
Wasn't enough distraction, wasn't enough chaos.
No. And I couldn't force this on myself, you know. And so just at some point, man, I fell on my face in the middle of all that. And I don't know how far I'd gone, but man, I just felt the weight of all these years and all this stuff. And I just fell on my face, and I cried out to God. I said, listen, I said, nothing's working. Nothing I'm doing is working. And I repented, and I just wept, and my face was just in the dirt. And I don't really know how long I was there, I do know that God just was doing a work inside of me, And as I surrendered, and of course, there's these things that happen, in my physical body, when the Holy Spirit, the Creator of the universe, touches you, that something's happening physically, And however long I was there, it kind of lifted. And then here's what I felt and heard. It was as if a hand was on my shoulder, and I felt a squeeze. Now look, anywhere I've been around, you feel a squeeze, it's go time, right? And I got the squeeze, and then I just heard this. All right, let's take it out. Now, it wasn't some, all right, son, let's come on, everything's going to be all right. No, it wasn't that. It was like, this is fixing to be a deal. The only way out of this deal is through, and I'm going to be with you. But buckle up. This is fixing to be a deal. And so, man, I got up from there, and I ended up coming back back home to Monroe. I met with a family therapist over at Watts Ferry Road at WFR, and he was like, man, look, I met with him and my ex-wife, she's still my wife at the time. And of course she was fit to be tied, and he was like, listen, you need to go to rehab. And I just laughed. I said, man, there's no way. I said, I've the last deployment that I had, that was as far as I'm going to be away from my kids. I just went up and I was been gone for like, a little over a month up here to, or maybe it was just a month. I don't know, whatever it was, with Dr. Mennerth. And I said, I'm not doing that, But he's like, listen, man, if you really need to do this, I said, man, I got it, So for whatever reason, he said, well, look, just think about it. But wherever you stay tonight, just, stay with somebody who's sober, And so I'm like, all right, I get it, And I found this guy that I just was a friend of mine. He was in recovery, and I yelled at him and said, hey man, here's the deal. They're trying to talk me into going to rehab, and I'm not really interested in it, but they're asking me to stay with somebody who's sober, And he was, he said, well, come on, And that night, literally, I'm sleeping in a race car, and there was aquariums on both sides of this race car, and I'm hanging out of it, and I'm just laying there like, look, is this what it's come to? You know what I mean? And so the next day, again, I can't remember exactly why this was set up like this, but I met with my wife and a neutral party there, right? And man, my butt wasn't in the seat for about maybe 2 minutes, and I was like, you know what? I'm out of here. This ain't gonna happen. It ain't gonna work out like this. It was just something, I don't know what it was. And so I get out and I get my truck, and I go, I get ready to pull out of that parking lot, and it hit me. I said, I had to go get high. And because I could have turned left and gone down to my drug dealer working at a car dealership down there, or I could have turned right, you know, and went over to one of the rehabs that we had been talking about. And man, there was just like this moment of clarity, and it was like, if that's my response, like if that is my response to this stirring of, you know, relationship, then I need to do something different, you know. And so so I go to I took off and I drove to a buddy of mine's place, and it's right where we're at.
Really?
Yep. And so a buddy I grew up with, you know, he's a minister, you know, and he was here on this property, you know, and I drove to this place. I didn't know where he was, but first time here, and you know, I confessed to my brother what I'd been doing, you know, and what had been going on, you know, and you know, when you confess, you know, it's not always just, you know, the stuff that I've been doing, you know, which is, it absolutely includes that, but it's also confessing, you know, like some of the stuff that's happened. Like here's what's happened, you know. And so I kind of told him all this. I said, listen, I'm going to go over here to this rehab. I said, I think I'm going to go right here, but if they can't get me in, I'm going to go over to Mississippi and I'll go in over there. And so I drive, and as a crow flies, it's only about 10 miles from here, you know. So I go over there, and I have to ask directions to get there, and all this stuff. And I find the place, and I go up, and anyway, they didn't have any beds, but they got me in. And man, you start talking about certain places and certain times that change your life, you know. I knew this. I knew that I was going to use that place as a burial ground, and I was going to leave as much there as I could. You know, I knew that I needed to get rid of some of this stuff, right?
Right.
So at that point, it had been, I think, like 36 years since I was, you know, sexually assaulted and all that stuff, and that was the place that I started talking about it, you know. And so there were some big things, and I you know, I learned how to get rid of all that stuff. I started learning about who I was, you know, learned about who I wasn't, you know. I learned you could get served divorce papers while you were in rehab, you know. And but man, I'll tell you, you know, I went through that, and then you know, at the time, you know, it was, the divorce and stuff was painful, and I knew that it was something for my kids, you know. But all I knew is that I was getting free, you know, and that it started at surrender, you know. And so that program was AA based, you know, and so I started working, you know, through the steps of AA, and really spending a lot of time there. And what I didn't realize that was happening was that during those days of you know, getting sober and all that stuff, and working through the steps and everything, and then just being in AA, right, was that I was turning, you know, I was starting to trust God, and it was the Father, right? So all of a sudden, this stuff's starting to clean up, you know. Now I'm just kind of getting this revelation, if you will, just, you know, a couple years ago, you know, on this thing. And I think you know, I crossed over, you know, we're in March, about a month ago, crossed over 10 years, you know, from the day that I came to this place, and so being sober about 10 years, and during that time, man, that's where I really started understanding and turning that I could trust the Father, you know. And that takes time. That wasn't just like automatic, you know. There was
Right.
some time there, you know. And but man, what a gift, you know, to trust the Father, you know, that He was there, you know, and to see that He was there and all that. So what happened after I got out of rehab, I came back here, and I had signed on a house in town, and it was close to my kids' school, so everything was kind of focused on my kids, and I came over here to spend some time. No, I signed on the house, and I was staying down in the bunkhouse, and my buddy was like, I was like, hey man, listen, I think I just signed on the house. He said, well, look, man, I'm fixing to sell this place. He said, my ministry's changing, all this. And I said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to buy it. Like, there was no hesitation. I said, just let me go see what the deal, if I can get out of this contract that I just signed last night, And so, I got in touch with those folks, and they were like, listen, I said, listen, I'm gonna go out of town, I've got this opportunity, and they were like, let's go ahead, we get it. And they let me out of the contract like that. And so I bought the place, and man, we're just like this building here, there was the bunkhouse and a couple other structures here. And man started to heal. My kids started to heal, and I met another girl. But look, there was still some, trying to, God's just, He's whittling away, and so the alcohol, He took the desire for drugs and alcohol off pretty quick, like that left pretty quick, and then I meet this girl, and she's a friend of mine's. Well, I say a friend. He's a friend of mine at the time. And his sister, and anyway, so I'll meet her, and she's back over here, and we start dating a little bit, and her eventually, that she has two girls. I got a boy and a girl here, and they start spending some time out here, and on this place, everyone just started to heal. Like she began to heal. Her little girls began to heal, and I'm just saying this right now just for instructional purposes only, because I don't say step kids or any of that kind of stuff. They're my daughters, and
I've never heard you refer to them any other way.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah. And they know that, and man, I remembered what it was like when my parents were dating, and it was just weird, and I was protective over them, especially my mama, and man, I was so sensitive to that time in my life, and I just told her, I said, listen, I said, don't touch me. Don't no affection. Don't reach out and touch my hand or any of that kind of stuff when the kids are around, And I wasn't so much worried. I guess it was all the kids, but I was just a little bit more on her side. You know what I mean? Because mom is just a little bit different. Maybe my little girl with me, but whatever the dynamics would be, I just didn't want there to be any kind of, I didn't want mine to resent her for any kind of reason, like,
right.
What kids do,
yep.
Right? As a matter of fact, I told her, I said, listen, I said, your little girls they'll be holding my hand way before they see you hold mine. And, but so that kind of, that as a matter of fact, I mean, that was such a big deal, it was, I think one time our oldest, Caroline, says, hey, Mama, does JJ know that he's or do they call him Mr. JJ? Does Mr. JJ know he's your boyfriend?
That's so sweet.
You know,
and that's got
you know,
sweet innocence,
yeah.
man.
But
That's
she's
awesome.
like,
That's
you know,
great.
You know, you know he's your boyfriend, but does he know? You know, and but you know, and I wasn't even, and at the time, man, I wasn't looking for this. I wasn't looking for relationship with some woman, you know, because I had to be very careful with that, you know. You know, and I was just really just kind of you know, keeping her and anybody else that, you know, early and, you know, just at a distance, you know, and just trying to heal, you know, and I just didn't want to, you know, I just didn't want everything to end up being the same way, you know. I didn't want there to be I think I just didn't want there to be another failure, you know, in relationship, and man, you know, we came here, we healed, and on this place, and eventually we got married, and it's interesting about healing in this property that there were guys that have lived here in some of these structures, right? Like in the past 10 years. And I think there's like 6 of us total, you know, including myself. And their time here, they were able to heal with their families, as far as not necessarily, you know, they're getting back together with their ex-wife or anything, but with their children, you know, heal and then become whole enough to enter into another relationship. So anybody who lived on this property either ended up, when they left here, they were either married or they were engaged, you know. But I can tell you that they were whole enough to be in a healthy relationship, which was, you know, and I don't know what that has to do with anything. It just has happened. It just is what it is, right? And time begins. Things were getting good, right? You know, and as far as relationship wise and things like that, and at the time, so my wife, now this girl Elizabeth, you know, she's devout Catholic, okay, and I
heard a little bit of this story last night. I want to get your side.
Yeah. So man, look, I'm talking about, you know, everything and nothing. Look, like, you know, my dad was Catholic, all that stuff. You know, nothing. It's just a religion, right? Just like any others. And but I mean, she's devout, right? I mean, she's, you know, she's steady going to church, you know, and I wasn't steady going to church, you know, but I knew where I was at in general. And at this time now, I've got a trust for the Father, and I'm praying to the Father more along those lines. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And but I just kind of fall in with her, and I'm just going to the, you know, to mass, and you know, I'm not going to interrupt her. You know, she's been steady on the, you know, but I've not, you know, but I'm going in there, and you know, so we're attending the Catholic mass and all that during that time, and man, I start wanting to take my life back. You know, I end up going out west and working in the oil field, helping a friend of the family's out there, and building some relationships there. And somewhere along the way, I was like, man, let's, you know, we were going to buy some trucks, and so we opened a trucking company, and you know, we're moving some oversized loads and stuff. Ended up moving windmills and things like that. Anyway, the whole thing, big mistake. You know? But I say that, but it was you know, it was a pruning was happening, you know. The idea that taking my life back and there were some things that were going to about to get burned out in us, you know, because after that, you know, COVID's getting close to hitting, or it hits, and you know, the work is slowing down, you know, everything's slowing down, and it was already getting, it was just getting tough, what was happening, and man, at that same time, I'm just getting this full on like this. You're not supposed to be doing this, and even though the things weren't, as they weren't where they weren't where it was where we thought that things were going to go. You know what I mean?
Right.
And of course, everything's happening, and then this whole windmill thing. We basically they ran out of product because the companies had shut down. That was after we decided to stop. But I had this conversation with her. I said, "Listen, I said, we're having this is tough what we're doing, and we were already talking about, I'm supposed to be doing something else. Like we're supposed to be doing something else." And it was completely, I knew without a doubt that we were supposed to be doing something else. And even though the trucking companies, that stuff wasn't going how we thought it was going to go, we didn't, she was like, let's do whatever it is. Wherever you go, I'm there, And she was pretty fed up with the trucking stuff anyway. If you mention anything about trucks to her, she's like, she don't go. She still has a bad taste in her mouth about it. But we shut the company down. Like we didn't sell a company, and we didn't know exactly how this was going to play out, But I knew that there was some vision in the beginning about this property, and it was we knew that discipleship was going to be in that somewhat how, and I was thinking, I had just a lot of different ideas about what that would look like, But at one point we had my boy was going, there were some things going on with him, and we as a family, including, we decided, hey, look, we should go over to North Monroe and kind of get our kids, involved, and mainly with this deal with my son, and we wanted to get him kind of in a good group of people, whatever that looks like, right? And so and they needed to see us lead, and so she was gracious enough and understood the situation well enough. She's like, look, let's go, we'll do that, And so she stepped away from her, what she had been practicing all these years to step into this Protestant situation. You see what I'm saying? I mean, and look, when I mean like grew up in the Catholic system, I mean from kindergarten on up,
That had to be a culture shock.
Oh yeah. It was a trip because just all those things, and so we make this move and things start happening, and at the same time we're trying to figure out what to do here, and I start picking up with the carpenter shed, which is they're a sober living situation with therapy and based. We bring young guys in and let them be in a sober environment and get therapy for trauma that they've had, so far in life, and then and they come. What's happened is we've joined with them for a little bit and said, hey, listen, I'll bring them out to the ranch. We'll do some things like this, and for the first several days, 4 to 6 weeks. Some end up being here a lot longer, depending on what all individuals. Anyway, so those guys come here, and we're able to share the gospel of Jesus to them and show them what it looks like for men to follow Jesus, and that's done, so we're able to disciple, right, and so early in this deal, that's where they started showing up, and what God was doing during this time has been saying, hey, listen, He's letting us exercise some muscle, working some things through and just kind of seeing what works, you know, and all this. And I knew, and maybe some confirmation on, listen, what I've told you, here's what, you know, here's some guys, get started, you know. And so we've been able to do that, you know. And so what's there's been so many things happen that was absolutely God, you know, having his hand in this thing and saying, hey, listen, you know, here's what this looks like. The most significant thing is after we're making some of these adjustments, there comes a point where, and I don't know when this happened exactly, you know, but I know that it happened. It started on the side of that mountain, right, when I surrendered, and then I started trusting in the Father, and then eventually comes the relationship, because I had to deal with this. So I got God and the Father down, and the Holy Spirit had touched my heart, you know, and I understood that. But I had to deal with Jesus. I had to deal with this man, you know, and I had to deal with this relationship thing, you know. And so look, you know, when God hems you up and Jesus says, hey, look here, man, I'm right here. We're going to step this deal out, then let's do it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, a lot of things have happened. I started understanding the calling and getting the vision of what we were going to do here on the ranch, you know, even more. And things have been, as that has happened and starting about, you know, I went to a retreat with it that we had at the church, and Corey Taylor called me up. He said, hey, listen, you up for this retreat? And man, however this happened, you know, maybe he got me in or something because it was closed. And I was like, yeah, I said, I'm in. And man, I go to that retreat, and man, I just, you know, I get open and I had already, you know, been practicing being open and somewhat as pretty doggone transparent, you know, through the AA and the steps. And we're talking about stuff all the time. So I'm kind of there, but man, all this shift is happening. And so after this retreat, and we talk a lot about retreats around here. It's just what it is people are surrendering. Okay, the environment is created, and we're taking away taking away the noise just a little bit, letting you focus.
Exactly.
You know? And so after that retreat, I'm there at the front. You know, we're kind of at the service after the retreat on the Sunday, and man, I just feel I'm free, you know, freer, you know, and the message was given, and man, there's kind of an opportunity at the end to say, hey, listen, I was sitting over there whenever we've talked a couple times about this same Sunday, right? So whenever Andy was over here talking, and Andy shared about a specific Sunday, that same Sunday, I kind of catch the invitations given, and I catch some movement coming down the aisle, you know, and of course I'm aware of what's going on, and I look, and it's Elizabeth, right? So the other thing about Elizabeth is that she's very, you know, we got to go back to the family origin and some of this stuff, but well, she's very, very private, and she's quiet. She doesn't bring a lot of attention to herself, and stepping out in front of, like, you know, 2,500 people or 2,000 people, however many people it was, bunch. And
It's
going,
not a small church, bro.
No, and going down to the front.
It's not a small church.
Going down to the front, and look, she wasn't wasting time. Like, she was, you know, hey diddle diddle going down there. You know what I'm saying? And she was moving pretty quick, and about 10 feet behind her was Malia, my little girl, you know. And both of them just surrender, and she's, you know, and it's like, man, you know, she feels the tug of the Holy Spirit, you know. And so things are happening, you know, and so, man, she surrenders. Malia surrenders. 2 weeks later, they're baptized in the church, and you know, so we got this Catholic girl, you know, that is, you know, surrendered to a relationship with Jesus. Okay. Now she's Baptist Catholic or Baptist, whatever you want to call it, whatever the case is.
I call it Christian.
There you go. She loves Jesus.
That's all that matters.
And Len, let me tell you, you know, when we talk about courage and transformation, as I've watched this transformation happen in her, and it goes from like a very fearful woman, you know, probably in some cases, not everything, but in some cases the just very fearful of things, like a lot of women are. Just I've watched her do certain things and just step through into that fear, you know, and just be a lion. And man, it's and I stand there and I watch, and I'm just like, man, who is that? You know, well, it's Jesus working through her, you know. But she has to, you know, we all have to face and step into this fear, you know, because the fear, if there's any kind of fear there, you know, we have to take courage. You know, the Bible says take courage, you know, prompting us, hey,
right.
Listen, take courage, I'm here with you. You know, so we still have to, our bodies have to step into this courage. Like, we have to take courage to step into this, right? So, man, I've just watched her, you know, tell her story. And I've watched her get spiritually attacked, you know, and it kind of freak her out, you know, just like, well, what's going on, you know, but even knowing that there's going to be attack, you know, and dealing with some of that fallout, you know, she's like, I'm not going to stop doing it, you know, I'm not going to stop doing it. I'm just saying, look, this is going on, you know. She's recognizing and seeing it for what it is, you know, and look, man, she when that's the definition of transparency, you know, when she says and speaks that, hey, here's what's going on, she's shining light on these areas in her life. She's shining light on the fear. Well, where there's light, there can be no darkness, right? So the more she does this, the more she speaks and tells her story, the more I tell my story. Like, look, man, I'm free. Like, I'm telling you about this stuff in front of my wife, you know. Like, there's nothing, you know. It's just, why don't, you know, would I have just dumped all certain things on her at any point? No. You know, I mean, that's taking my stuff and putting it on somebody else. Right. Like, I need to take this and give it to, let Jesus take this out, you know.
He's the only one that can.
That's right. You know, and then as you know, as she is, you see what I'm saying? As she has gotten mature and you know, spiritually, and our relationship growing closer to Jesus, man, I'm talking about our relationship together has just been better today than it was yesterday and the day before, and way better in the beginning, you know. And it was pretty good. I mean, we were pretty honest in the beginning as far as, you know, honesty goes. But man, you know, the thing is, that if our lives or our marriages are Christ-centered, and then we are free, you know. Now that's a big step.
That's a huge step.
You know, are we free and are we whole? You know, Jesus came because, you know, for us to be free, right? You know, it's for freedom that he set us free.
Exactly.
You know, and so man, you know, and the other thing that was kind of been burned out of us through this time is that, you know, so she grew up in a you know, they parents did they did well and whatnot, and so I want to be careful when I say this because it's there's kind of a weird, there's still the same, and I came up in a place like we had some things, but we weren't, you know, we weren't privileged by any means, and but at the same time there's still the same kind of fear, right? So of whether or not God's going to take care of us. What it all comes down to it is whether or not God's going to take care of us. So that started to get burned out of us both. You know, even though we came from different angles, you know, it started to get burned out of us. And here's the reason why it had to happen, is because when we're doing this ranch gig, you know, this discipleship gig, right? There's no, like, this is what we're doing here is you know, and I haven't even used this word very much as far as toward myself, you know, as far as ministry, but that's what this is. And so, well, this we didn't know how things were going to get paid, you know, because we didn't sell a company, we closed a company.
That's what I did with mine. Yeah,
you know?
I just shut mine down. I didn't sell it. Yeah.
And so all these natural fears that would come up. So that stuff was getting burned out of us, because here's what was happening: provision. And if we were obedient, God's being faithful, you know, and He's just so good, and He's provided the whole way. Like even in the midst of some ideas of, like, you know, she would ask, well, what do you think about this? Like, how's this going to get, you know? And that's not every day, okay? But there would be times where this discussions would come up. And sometimes I didn't have an answer, you know? And man, even in that, in and of itself, you know, I had to be honest about things where I didn't say, you know, I didn't try to make things up, like, you know, because man wants to be able to say something, right? And man, you know that when we're trying to respond to that, you know, we have to really die to self, you know, and just so some of that's happening,
right? You
know, and so anyway, we get into this, and we're bringing the shed guys out. We've exercised, and we've tried a few things out, and. You know, Jeff was talking earlier today, Jeff Fitzgerald with FCA. All these guys that everyone who's watching the podcast, they've heard these names. Hopefully, those names they'll get a face to them if they watch the podcast. All these people are man, we mean so much to each other. Like, we lean on each other, and this is not it's not we were listening to something earlier today, and Elizabeth had brought it in, and these ain't buddies, you know. Buddies is the guy was talking about it. He said, well, buddies is who you have you do some kind of extracurricular. You got golf buddies, you got hunting buddies, you got whatever, drinking buddies.
You got brothers.
You know, this is brothers. It's a brotherhood.
Yeah.
You know. And we talk, man, whenever there's something hard going on, it's like, okay, well, let's hash
I'm
it with you, you know.
I'm here for you. Let's hash it out. 'Cause next time it may be you, may be swapped.
Yeah, that's right.
And you got to have that trust.
That's right. And let's walk through it. They're walking through
Yeah.
this stuff with us. And so some pretty miraculous things have happened on the provision side. So that kind of brings us up to the point of saying, okay, the vision. Okay, the vision of this ranch is discipleship. And so what that entails is a few different things, but here's the reason why. When we look at discipleship and we say that word, you know, if you and I and 5 others, you know, let's say we have 10 of us total, and we surrendered today, who would be here in 2 years? You know, if 2 of us were discipled well, those 2 are going to have a little better shot.
Yep.
You see what I'm saying? At
Absolutely.
being here in 2 years,
Yep.
right? So there's a way to do this better. Now, Jesus said to do a few things, right? He left us with some general orders. You know, one is to love God and love one another. All right, so that's 2. And the third one was, you know, go make disciples.
Yep.
You know, he didn't say make converts, which is all very important, a part of it. And that's the beginning. Right. And really, discipleship starts before that even a lot of times. You know, that's what we know about being here on the ranch with these guys that spend time here on the ranch, is that, you know, long before, you know, those guys are introduced even to Jesus. Now, look, we don't hold any bars, but we ain't shoving it down nobody's throat either, you know. But we gonna let you know that we walking with Jesus. We're gonna do a little Bible study, you know, once a week, and then every other week because every other week we're going to do a devo, and someone's going to come and tell their story, you know, and we're going to eat, and then someone's going to talk and tell their story and share whatever's on their heart, you know. And so what we see is that relationships being built, and then the guys we're sharing some time together. We're sharing, you know, they're getting to know each other. They're getting to know me. I'm getting to know them. And then we're sharing the gospel, you know. And man, whatever that is, we're giving the Holy Spirit an opportunity to do what He does.
Absolutely.
Now, all we can do is deliver some information. Ultimately, that's what we can do. And we can show, and we deliver that information through the Word and our testimony, you know, and because so that's what we're seeing. Like, and guys are surrendered to Jesus, man. We're not wasting any time. We're going and we explain. We want them to ask questions, you know. We want but we want to be able to answer questions, you know. So when these honest questions come up, you know, we answer those questions, you know, and we talk it through. But we don't try to force, you know, Jesus on anybody. You know, that's not our job. The Holy Spirit takes care of all that.
Exactly.
You know, we just say, here's the truth, you know. And
we can't save anybody.
No, absolutely not. No.
We lead them there.
Yeah. Yeah.
God saves them. Christ saves them. We're just a vessel. We're just He uses in the process.
That's right. And man, if we can do that, you know, but we've got to be able to disciple better.
Exactly.
You know, and so
I'm with you, JJ. I'm with you. It's missing.
So but look, so if there's one guy, if it's just one guy, then disciple one guy well. You know, because this is a matter of life and death, you know, and so this guy, here's what we know, you know, that we can do something better. We can do it better, you know, and what that method is that we're going to apply those methods, you know. So one of the pieces of this discipleship piece is that I'm pretty big on is initiation into manhood. Take younger men, and listen, there's plenty of older guys, but when we start talking about younger men, I'm talking about boys that are maybe going into between their 8th and 9th grade year, something along those lines. We're going the delivery method is in the form of a camp, you know. We can call it whatever, like gentleman's camp, you know. But basically, it's this: the recognition that you are a created being, you know, and that there's a full circle that comes around, and there's a reason why you're here. That identity, you know, we're going to get well deep into identity, and not the identity that we present for ourselves, the identity that God spoke, you know, when He said, John, here's what He meant,
Yep.
not who you
Exactly.
created, okay, along the way, and not what your circumstances
Made me into.
There you go, you know.
I have to be transformed into the likeness of Christ.
Yeah, and so the identity that when He spoke your name before He created anything.
Yep, I need to take that on.
That's what He calls you by, just like He did with Gideon. You know, Gideon's up there hiding in the cave,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Hey, wait a minute, where's my mighty man of valor?" You know, and so he's speaking to Gideon in his identity. You know, so. If we operate in that identity, then we're going to be that. That's what He called us. There you go. What is He asking for? What does He have for me to do? You know, what does He want me to do? He wants you to operate in your identity that He created you in. When He spoke your name, you know, when He knitted you together in your mother's womb, yeah. You know, when that old lady's sitting there knitting and she's got a little old patch right here about that big. Well, you ask her what that is. She said, "Well, this is a sweater." Well, it doesn't look like a sweater. I said, "I know. But it's a sweater." She knows exactly what it is. He knows exactly what we are. You know, we don't know, you know, until we get it worked out.
Yeah. We just may be a piece in the new quilt.
That's right.
Quilt piece. That's all we are. There's no backing. There's no stitching. No nothing. We're just being cut out.
That's right. That's right. So that in that piece, so of the initiation piece for the boys, you know, is so that we can answer some of those masculine questions, bring them in from boyhood into manhood, you know, and with the understanding of there's a creed to live by, you know, and we have that piece for them to understand and know, and it's a dangerous situation. I mean, there's going to be some elements of danger there, and inside of that, and the things that are going to challenge them, you know, and then when they step into this deal, that they'll understand that, hey, I'm just in the beginning of this. Like, my body's not even done growing, but I know that I've stepped into manhood here, yeah. You know. But in that comes a parent piece that the parents have to understand. Listen, you know, there's certain things that you might do that it will emasculate him, you know. Mama, his name is not Timmy anymore. You know, you can call him Tim or Timothy or something, whatever that looks like. But he's not your little Puff Bear or whatever your nickname is for him. He's not that anymore. And then, of course, Dad, if he's available, then we're going to have that conversation with him. You know, about be big and even not belittling.
Yep,
you know?
Exactly.
And some other things, but along those lines, so they understand that. Wait a minute, you know, because what we see here is that we got dudes running around, right? We got all these cats that are in college and after college, or maybe not in college. They just didn't finish. They're not doing anything, and they're living at their mama's house, and they're talking ugly to her in the kitchen and all this stuff. And all this a lot of it stems from, you know, them not being initiated into manhood. And so that being said, you know, Mom, you're going to have to, is weaning time,
Yep.
You know what I mean? And you might cry a little bit, like you pull one of them calves off the mama cow. She's gonna sit out there and bay and cry a little bit. She's gonna look around and say, "Where's my baby at?" But and he's gonna sit over there and he's gonna have some emotional stuff going on too. But the truth is it's necessary to move forward, and with like some of these guys that are coming around now, you know, they're 18, 19 years old, and it's like, listen, you know, one of the hardest truths that I've told some of them, and most all of them, is that, listen, you ain't ever gonna be 10 again. It just is never going to be. Every day, every time you go to sleep and you wake up, you one day further from 10 years old. Like, you ain't ever gonna be that again.
You can't walk your entire life dragging an umbilical cord.
That's right. That's right.
It has to be cut eventually.
That's right. So anyway, so all those things collectively in that one piece, the camp piece, is discipleship. You know, and then there's some follow-up things behind that. You know, because again, for us just to turn somebody loose like that, you know, is not discipleship.
No.
You know, but that's at the beginning of something, and as they go into high school, and then there's some touch point and maintenance pieces that follow that up. You know, that we're creating, and so all that's, we've got elements of this all together, and we're just starting to pull that together. The other thing is like fundamental training. Let's say if you and I are together, and I surrendered my life to Jesus, and then I came to you and I said, listen, I've got 2 days. Teach me what I need to know, because I'm fixing to go to Africa or go somewhere. And I need to know how to be a Christian. Like, what am I going to face? And how do I go about this? Like, how do I read my Bible? How to, you know, what's this? I heard something about spiritual warfare. What does that look like? You know, just some fun, basic Christianity stuff, right? Like how to walk this thing out in this world, okay? And so that in and of itself is a training, you know. To say it's a couple of days, right? So we've already done one of those. I don't know if you'll see Johnny or not, but our good friend, all of our Johnny Phillips, he's doing a lot of this stuff out here. We're partners in this, in what we got going on here, and that in itself is another piece of provision. You know, when you've got what we're dealing with is a guy that says, hey, you know, so some things were happening. I said, hey, I went and asked him. I said, hey man, what do you think about this? Just running it past him, some ideas. I was going to approach the business end of this thing, you know, a little bit. And he said, listen, you know, here's what I think. Gave me some ideas. He said, but listen, don't worry about that. If that doesn't work out, let's just do this, you know. And what that ended up entailing was a partnership, and it was God just completely sweeping in.
Someone who shares your vision.
Oh yes. Now listen, all these guys around in this community share the discipleship vision. We all the one thing that we understand is that one, let's present and get men free and women, and then after that they must be discipled, you know, and whatever avenue of approach. So we've got guys that are, man, they're just here. There is a sense of urgency to disciple in this community right now, and so whatever vessel we use to make that happen, we're very focused in those areas, and we want to make sure that it's done in an effective manner, you know. So in support of all this, like just all those guys come through. They come through and they give their testimony. And this is not a JJ show by any means, you know. It's like, hey, you know, come tell your story, share, you know, and we present an opportunity for the Holy Spirit to work, you know. So, but anyway, having said that about the, you know, about these trainings and stuff, it's all tactical, you know, and that because there's a battle that we're fighting, you know, and the war is won. We know that the everything that was taken care of with an empty grave, right? So it was all the war was won there. But what we're fighting, these battles, because for a minute there, I was like, well, man, how's that work? You know, people kind of wonder, well, why am I getting attacked? Well, we're getting attacked because it's guerrilla warfare. That's what's happening, you know. Just like when we talk about the Civil War, or I'm sorry, even the Civil War, but any war.
Right.
Once the paperwork is signed, you know, if we're talking about the Pacific in World War II, you know, back on Guam, the paperwork was signed and the war was done, but the next day, guess what? There's still shooting going on.
They don't know there's a ceasefire.
Yeah. And even if it was, hey man, they're still fighting.
Yeah.
You know, bullets are still flying, people are still dying.
It happened in Vietnam,
Yeah.
It's happened in all of them.
So that's what's going on right now, you know. And that's why we fight these battles, you know. And so as long as we're here, but you know, on this earth walking around, there should be a sense of urgency to take care of business while we're here. Because here's the thing. If I'm going to sit, now here's an American thing to do. All right, I got my ticket punched. I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
You know. Now that's a hard truth. If you have your ticket punched, if you have your salvation ticket punched, you say, all right, I got my ticket to heaven. How much do you have to hate somebody to not share the gospel with them?
Makes you wonder how you got your ticket punched.
Do you have it punched? You see what I'm saying? You know, the thing is, like, listen, man, there's people that need saving. Let's help get them there. You know, and then let's help disciple them. Why? Because there's more people that these disciples need to go and share their story.
Yeah, absolutely.
You see, so in this fundamentals of this walk with Jesus and this relationship with Jesus is, hey man, listen, Jesus, let's go get as many as we can. You know, let's build the kingdom. This is all kingdom work. You know, and if that doesn't fire you up, then man, what's going on? You know. What are you bound by? If that doesn't fire you up, what are you bound by? Because you must not be free. Well, let's go back to that then. Let's start working on getting you free.
Yep.
So that you can go out and be unafraid. You know, let's get out there and get it. You see what I'm saying? So it all ties in together. You know, let's get free, and then let's go help the oppressed get free. You see what I'm saying? So that's our vision here. Absolutely. Look, we got. I showed you some blueprints over there of a structure that we're going to build and create an opportunity for people to.
I like how you said that. You said we're going to build, not we hope to build.
No.
We're going
yeah.
to build. I like that.
Yeah, because here's and look, where's the money? I don't know. That's not my business. It's God's business.
That's right.
You see, here's what I know. Like it's a simple. Like there's a trailer house over here. You know, we selling that. What are we gonna do? Well, we're gonna put some dirt down. You know, that's what we're gonna do. Well, what then? I don't know, but the dirt's going down.
God knows what's next.
Yeah. We've got some ideas. We're not positive, but I'm not worried about all that. And see, when I was talking about Elizabeth and this burning some stuff out, man, there were things that I knew was a home run that I was scared to death just because of what something cost and stuff like that, you know. And that's not, man. I'm not scared by that. I'm not, and it's not nothing that I've done, because listen, man, that stuff like that, you know, I kind of grew up when I talk about growing up like that, you know, and there being fear, like where's, you know, it was like, man, I'm not, and I think that was from my family had passed down because they grew up, you know, farming and all that stuff, and just, you know, scared to death. And so, but when it comes to this, it's like, hey, no, we're putting dirt down, you know, and so that's the interesting thing when we're talking about God burning stuff out of us, you know, that happened, and that was the other thing about even opening that company. Part of that was this like, you know, there was a fear there of stepping off into that, you know, and so being burnt out, man, it just opens the door for all this stuff.
I got to find this in the right.
We're talking about some offsetting.
While he's looking that up, I actually got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about the rites of passage for young men.
Yeah.
There's a entire generation, maybe even two now, of men in this country that never had that rite of passage, because our culture, even though as great as the melting pot of America is, we have completely allowed that melting pot to destroy any form of the healthy forms of tribalism that we have that include many of those rites of passage. So do you guys have anything that's maybe for that older generation, for them to go through to kind of get that rite of passage, or as a reaffirmation of the rite of passage they go under for maybe the boys that as they undergo that first rite of passage, as a reminder of what they went through, as a reminder of who they are?
Yeah. So and that's interesting you say that, because even as I was telling him about these boys, it always comes back up that, what about your 30-year-olds? You know, what about those in those windows and those generations that did not have any type of initiation, okay, any type of rite of passage or any of that stuff, right? Because as I think the shift and I think the shift in America and with Americans and stuff was when we started getting jobs, like the industrial times, like whenever we started getting factories, and all of a sudden we're not working with our dad anymore. We're not on the farm, you know. Yeah. We're not doing side by side with him anymore. We've left and we've gone to work at some factory to get a job, and we got sold on this idea that factory or something along those lines. And I don't get too deep into that, but that's where I think that this and some other guys have talked about that shift happening. But in any the civilized, you know, world, if we call it civilized, you know, we've lost all of this. Like to get this, we need to go back to some indigenous tribe somewhere and see what's going on, you know, and pull from those guys, exactly. You know, whether it be Africa or even the. I mean, I worry that even some of our closest folks, you know, that we have here on this continent, that they're even losing, you know, they're even losing it, you know.
It's worldwide.
You know,
we may lose the battle, but we're going to win the war.
Oh yeah, it's already
won. That's
already done. Yeah, yeah.
So what I was going to read to you is, I deal with the same thing. My whole life I've lived in fear. Mm-hmm. Two things, and I think I told this to Derek. Two things that I fear the most in life, and God's given me deliverance over it, victory over it. The first one is failure, the fear of failure, because I've never been able, when I failed, I never got a second chance. Mm-hmm. Failure was the end, it was final. Or I was made to feel that way. There was never a second chance. Mm-hmm. And with God, there's always a second chance. And He's proven that to me since He's brought me back into the fold. And 2 Timothy 1:7 is my verse. And it's anytime I write something on somebody, it's usually what I use is, for God not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. So fear doesn't come. There's good fear of the Lord. Now, don't get me wrong. There's good fear, but He doesn't give us a spirit of fear that's going to make us to where we live a defeated life. That's not from God. And I had to get over that in a big way. So I understand fear, brother, in a big kind of way.
Somewhere, yeah. You know, of course, there's. Well, matter of fact, Elizabeth, we got to talking about fear, and she was getting ready to tell her story or something, and the fear, do not fear, is that phrase is about. Do you have? There's 365 times in the Bible. It says, "Do not fear," or "Fear not," or something along those lines. So that'd be one for what? Every day.
Yep.
Every day of the year, right? Let me see here. I was looking at now that's big time right there.
That's huge.
You know, what does that say? You know.
When you said 365 a day, I'm like, well, that's a year's worth.
Yeah, that's one for every day. And let me see here. Somewhere over here in Deuteronomy. Be strong and courageous. Deuteronomy 31:6. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them. For the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave nor forsake you. Do not be afraid or terrified. Be strong and courageous. Man, look, when I would be laying there in bed at night, when I was a kid, I was terrified. You know, and I don't know when I got into that right there. That was referencing that, but it was when Elizabeth was kind of talking about fear and was working through some stuff, you know, and matter of fact, it was if I remember correctly, you know, this has been a couple weeks. It's like building up for one of these retreats, right? So again, stepping out of her comfort zone and stepping into something she was scared of, being in this position of just they got somebody, have to have someone to manage these retreats, right?
Right.
So then they got a little team, or they got the leaders, and then they've got the team that drops out.
The directors,
right?
the co-directors, and
co-director. So she's a co-director on one, and that's completely, it's like I don't want to do that, and but it was interesting because all of those co-directors, like, they were getting attacked, and it was the finally whenever they got together and they said they were transparent and started shining light on what the darkness and talking about this stuff. There was fear-based, and it was all the same. So like the enemy's rolling around with this same attack, and on insecurities and things like that, and you're gonna look, all these things, right? And so that's where this was all kind of coming up, talking about this fear thing. And man, it's just when that stuff begins to, I hate it, right? So I just started talking about that relationship I had with fear, and to fear to me at this point in my life, it comes between me and God.
Yep.
So what does that turn it into? What is it for me? Well, fear is like, it's sin, If it's a fear that's coming in between me and God,
yeah, if it's interfering with your relationship,
then hey, we're talking about fear, That's a sin to me, you know, and I hate it. You know, we start talking about, man, whatever it is that whatever sin is in my life. Jeff mentioned earlier, and we've had this discussion, Jeff and I, that I just hate the sin, you know, and it changes again, like he was saying that it's not me, you know, it's not me, it's the sin in me, you know, and but what a wonderful thing for God to burn those things out of you. And man, listen, I'm not walking around without any fear, okay? You know, all of this stuff crops up, you know. It'll crop up. Just the period of time I let it operate with me, yeah. Then it'll, you know. I was having a discussion with Johnny about this stuff. And so here's how it starts out. It starts out, you know, one of us encouraging the other, you know. Or both of us just kind of being up high, right? You know, no fear. And then all of a sudden, you know, we keep talking, and then all of a sudden fear starts cropping up. And then I'm like, listen, I said, hold up. I said, we can sit here and talk each other into getting scared, you know, over this, you know, but remember. I said, man, we're just not going to operate in that, you know. And then all of a sudden we're back up here. You see, and that's the need for community.
Yep. You
know, and that's what we want to show the people that come to this place, to this ranch, that man, when we're walking this earth, you know, we need each other. You know, we need community. You see?
Yep.
And hey, listen, and there's a reason. Like, we need each other. Jesus said it himself.
Exactly.
You know, so here's what he said. He said, look, Lazarus. First he says, Lazarus, come out. Well, I mean, he had to say Lazarus, first of all, because if he said come out, then
they'd all come out.
Yeah, everybody would be walking around, right? You know. But he called him by.
That's how we got the Walking Dead.
There you go. That's where it came from. It wasn't anything. But so look. And then Lazarus comes out, you know, and I don't know what, you know, he comes out, and the Bible says, and he told them. He told them.
Yep.
To unwrap him, take the grave clothes off. He told them. Who was them? All them people.
All them people standing there watching.
Hey, because he was raised from the dead. He came out, he was dead no longer. All right, so when we surrender, we're dead no longer, but we still got some hang-ups, right?
Yep.
We still got these things, right? We still rattling when we're going down the road a little bit. We got some chains, right? You know, we're bound. Jesus said, unbind him. Take the grave clothes off. He told them,
yep.
Right? Because he was still bound. He still had this all around his head. Get him, y'all help him, cut him loose. Loose him. You see? So I mean, there it is. You know? Jesus said, hey, y'all help your brother, get the grave clothes off,
yep.
And let's move forward.
Yep.
You know?
Absolutely.
So that's what when we can have this community and be in this, that's what we're doing for each other. When when we're at any kind of training, whether it be a retreat or a training here, that's what we're doing. You know, helping take the grave clothes off. Man, men are getting free. Women are getting free. Man, because we're walking around, the church house is full of broken people and full of people that are hiding, and they don't want to get it transparent and be honest. All right? So let's provide an opportunity.
Because Satan lies to them. They sit there and they say, I'm the only one here that's ever been sexually molested. I'm the only one here that's ever cheated on my wife. I'm the only one here that looked at porn this morning before I come to church. I'm the only one here that took a drink before I walked through the doors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they think they're the only one when everybody sitting beside them all around is carrying the same junk.
Yeah. But now here's the other thing. Now let's remember, though, that a big part of this deal, when we start talking about this spiritual warfare thing,
Yeah.
is that because I'm in here and everybody in them pews have skin on,
Yep.
right? And so everybody in there, we all have I got a skin disease. You hear me? I got a skin disease. My skin is my problem.
Yep.
You know, first and foremost, before the enemy, because he's whatever I have a tendency to do, that's my flesh. You know, that's what JJ does. You know, if it's up to me, I'm gonna land myself over there at the rehab and divorced and, from all this other, extracurricular activity that doesn't belong to me. You know what I'm saying? And so, but our skin has plenty of problems way before the enemy comes in there. And so that in itself, our pride, all those things, so man, that's when we start talking about, so what we're going to do when we start building this facility that we've drawn up, we're ready. We can do a lot of these things. We can provide a location for even retreats, and let that be a better location.
Can I'm going to ask you a question, and then I want to go back to what you're talking about with the retreat, with the building. You're talking about what you want to do. Is it your feeling or your belief that we give Satan too much credit for our flesh? That we want to say it was Satan when it really wasn't Satan, it was our flesh.
Yeah.
I think there's a separation there. Mm-hmm. Because he's not omnipotent. He can't be in every place at one time. And I think a lot of what we battle with, this is my personal opinion, so you put it in the comments section, however you want to feel about it. Throw it at me, give me scriptures, let's talk about it. But I feel like a lot of times we give Satan too much credit.
Yeah.
And it's our flesh that, because of Adam and Eve, it's what we're born in. We're born into sin. We're decaying every day. We're getting older. We're getting wrinkly. We're getting saggier. We're losing our memory. We're getting gray, and we should be getting wiser. Mm-hmm. But we're getting one day closer to a resurrection that looms for all of us.
Yeah,
it's a convenient excuse.
That's a good way to put it, Chad.
Yeah. So absolutely. So here's the thing. Like our flesh has plenty. The Bible says that our flesh is at war against the spirit. And so, like I just said, that before the enemy even shows up. Now the enemy's got a history book on us. Right?
Exactly.
And he sees what we have a tendency to do. So if I'm over at the grocery store, and some good-looking woman walks by and she's scantily clad or something, which is not her fault or anything like that. I mean, there could be some, but so if I respond to that, how am I going to respond to that? My flesh is the first and foremost thing, right? If I get fearful about something, and maybe somehow my prestige is threatened, or my pride is threatened, or something like that, my first response is going to be, is there, am I getting defensive, or is there what's going on?
I deal with that every day.
So that's me operating. I've got plenty. Like the enemy ain't got to even, you know what I'm saying? He ain't got to. Now you know what I'm saying? But here's the thing: if I focus on Jesus, the more I focus on Him, the enemy and even my flesh, you have to stay out toward the edge of the light somewhere, just way around the perimeter somewhere. You know, if I can just focus on Jesus. Now, will I have these? Yes. But if I'm focused on Jesus, then there's just too much light. You know, if I told a kid young man the other day. I asked him. I said, "Well, man, how you struggling? Where are you struggling at?" You know, and he hem-hawed for a second, and then he just, you know, I said, "Where are you struggling at?" You know, he said, "Well, I just, you know, that lust and, you know, porn stuff." I said, "Well, look, when you ride one, just keep doing what, as far as the Bible says, you know, he's going after Jesus, you know." I said, "But you put that phone, you open up your Bible, you need to have your weapon close enough so you can reach it. Just open it up and lay your phone on there, you know, and look." And I told him, I said, "Listen, this might be, you know, Jedi mind tricks to yourself, all right, you know, but you put your phone on that Bible and just see how that works out." I said, "I don't know how it's going to work out, but you put your phone on that Bible, and then let's get some things like covenant eyes and some of this other stuff and put on your phone, and start doing that." Because listen, you know why? Because, well, his you know, he's used to acting a certain way. He's been doing this stuff for however long, right? We've been operating in fear for 59 years, right?
Yep.
Okay, so if you've been operating in fear, I've been operating in fear for 53 years. Then what's to stop? Why wouldn't I go back to that? It's almost a knee-jerk response, you know?
Yep.
It's a reflex.
It's almost like an
Even.
addiction.
Yeah, you know.
And it gets you before you realize what's happened.
That's right. But here's, you know, when we start talking to some of those things are just, even when I went back to that I didn't even know was happening, right? So if I'm bound by something that I don't really know, that I didn't trust the Father. Let's go back to that idea, right? So if I can pray for, Lord, just help me to see the things, not that help me to see the things that I believe about you that are not true. You know, like help me to see those things. Like, so the idea that you're not going to take care of me, like that took some revelation from God to see. Wait, that whole time I just didn't think that He was going to take care of me. You know, and where did it start? Well, it started back whenever I was be left at home alone. Yeah. And I made an agreement to some bad idea that He wasn't going to take care of me. You know, but you see how that was? Like there was a Bible and a gun side by side, you know, and it was real subtle. But see, the enemy, he's no respecter of age. Yep. You know, and if he can get you in the beginning, which is most likely the case, everybody. Someone mentioned the other day, we were talking about doing something for the high school guys. Like they'd already done something for the girls, and we're talking about the high school guys, and someone mentioned, "Hey, these guys got grown men. They got grown men hang-ups." And I didn't respond to it, but I was like, no, us grown men have boy hang-ups.
And that's a good way to put it.
It
really is.
Because it all started there.
Exactly.
You
yes.
know? And these grown men, we've got to heal from this wound that we took as a boy.
You're absolutely correct.
You know, and so now what difference does that make? Well, one that makes to me in that arena, it's like, well, it makes more difference for this to you, old guy, right, 45. We need to let's have a conversation about your wounds. You know, let's go back, and because you're grown. That didn't just start last year. That started way back. You see what I'm saying? Yep. Let's go back to whether it was a specific event whenever you were a kid or younger, or whenever innocence was lost. You know, I've spent some time around the For King and Kingdom guys. You know, a lot of time, and man, I got real free up there. It's another type of retreat, okay? And I hate even, we've said retreat so much, but it's been a big part of our lives around here. Now, this is a group of guys, and we hope to do some of this stuff here, a little smaller, more intimate opportunity, you know. I was, hold on just a second. I get this, when you get your brain rattled a little bit sometimes, you know, lose my train of thought.
Just take your time.
Here, you know, tell I'm getting fatigued or something. But it was, what was we talking about? Right before
For
that.
King of Kingdom and the retreats and
I got
the
you. So we're talking about the guys that you know, we got this 43-year-old, right? 45-year-old, and his problems didn't start just immediately. You know, they didn't start last year. They all started back over here, you know, early. You know, providing the opportunity to get back to that wound, and recognize and see it for what it was. You know, speak it out and talk about this thing. You know, shine light on it. You know, is where, you know, then we can see some freedom there. You know, and so there's another piece of that is, so let's just say, and I don't want to get hung up in the age, right? But when we are 45 years old and we say we don't realize that we've got something that we need to let go, you know, that something could keep us from being a emotionally mature or emotionally healthy disciple. You see what I'm saying? So, but because if you're not free, how, you know, you can still help somebody, but you know, how effective can you be? Like if you're not free in this area, well, what if that guy's not free in that area? You see what I mean? Like you need to be free.
Yeah.
And be emotionally healthy to disciple, you know. So how do we get there? Well, we have to kind of work through some of this old stuff.
It's like a leper trying to help someone else cure his leprosy.
Yeah,
I mean, because if you're carrying the same burden, how you gonna help somebody else?
Right.
Yeah, I get exactly what you're saying. Yeah. Now, whenever I left the retreat, and we've talked about this, when I went back to my wife, I think what I actually told her was, revival has broken out in West Monroe or Monroe, Louisiana. Because like I was talking with Elizabeth last night, I'm tickled to death at what's going on in Asbury is going on.
Yeah.
But it's not the building.
Mm-hmm.
Revival is here. It's in you. It's in me. It's a change. It's a repentance. It's here. And what I love about, and I'm not just trying to put you guys on a pedestal. I'm not. You're human, but you're doing a great work here for the cause of Christ. When these men and women go to these retreats, I don't know how many times I've seen on the group meets for those retreats where guys have said, "Hey, is there a Bible study?" There is not one, not two, but a list of Bible studies. And if you're like me and you're from out of town, hey, zoom in. Yeah, it's available. I got goosebumps on me. Yeah. I'm just, that to me, that's what it's all about. But you want to take that to the next level. Yeah. And I am so on board with what you're doing, bro. I can't wait to go back and tell my wife that what they're doing up there hopefully will change will make a huge impact in winning our country back. Mm-hmm. And stop being passive Christians. Yeah. Yeah. We've got to take our country back. Yeah. And I don't want anybody, no, look, FBI, don't come after me. Yeah. I'm just saying our moral principles that this country was founded on, we need to go back. Yeah.
So, you know, if we've got to You know, because I think even brought, you know, a little bit more. I'm thinking yes, absolutely, our country and stuff like that. But you know, it's the only way that we do that, one, is just like what you just said. The revival starts here
in each individual.
You know, and then inside of our realm of authority, which would be in our home, our address, whatever physical property, you know, and I there's a lot of guys, man, I like to pray for them in areas of like that, you know, like whatever they have authority over, you know, that the Holy Spirit, you know, blanket that, you know, and I don't really, you know, it's just because I know they've got authority over that,
right?
You know, so whether that's their younger kids that are still in their innocence, you know, their families, you know, as a whole, because they have authority over their family, and then they have there's a level of authority in their businesses, you know, or their position at work, you know, that they operate in the Spirit, you know, in step with the Spirit whenever they're operating in those areas of authority, you know. But if we can't do it, if we're not doing it inside, you know, home, you know, first here inside of me, and then inside my home, at least, you know, and then in those areas of my authority, then if we can't do it individually, then we'll never see it corporately, you know, and then what will happen, you know, if we can do it individually, you know. So that's where I keep, when we go back to the part where the position of if man A can be free, and then he's able to decide this and be whole,
right,
emotionally healthy, you know, then what happens in his immediate family, you know? Because remember, if we go back to our family of origin, how has that affected us? You know, right? Because now remember, now we're 59 years old with boy problems, of fear, right? Because we're not free yet.
That we've got back at the very beginning.
Yeah. So well, your son. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So if my son's 5 and I'm healthy and whole and walking in the Spirit, then man, I can disciple a whole lot different than I can when I'm bound by addiction, when I'm bound by lust, when I'm bound by all these other, you know, when I'm bound by my childhood or wounds.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So when we're talking about this, the generational piece and how that just, you know, we always have to go, we should always go back and take a look at that.
Exactly.
You know? And have we handled up on those wounds, you know? And then, you see what I'm saying? So now we don't have any kids yet, but it'll come, it'll happen at some point, right? So let's get healthy, let's get whole. Let's take care of some wounds ahead of time, so that then we have more to give when we're ministering to an individual, you know, and we're focused in and man, I don't want to be having these hang-ups over here, you know. I want, if the Holy Spirit's going to use me, you know, then I want Him to use me.
Exactly.
You know, it's not me, but we need a clear conduit, right? We don't need any breaks in the wire. You don't need anything like that. We need to, you know, as healthy and whole as I can be in the Spirit, then I want to be that for you, you know, and then we can deal with whatever we're dealing with here, one-on-one, you know, knee-to-knee kind of situation. Let's go to town. Let's go to battle. You know, let's get to the nut cutting. you know.
Yep.
And so anyway, when that happens, man, what happens down the line, down the generational line? You know, what does that look like? You know, well, things start changing. The trajectory of the whole deal changes. You know, when we're gone to heaven, what happens to great grandkids that we don't never met?
Yeah.
You know, there's a responsibility there also, I think. You know, did we handle up on some business here, or did we not handle up on some business here? You know, because the kids that show up, you know, 3 generations down that we never see, you know, did we change the trajectory of that?
Yeah.
You know, now, you know, did we allow for that? You know,
Exactly.
You know, and I want to be real, you know, in all of this, and this would be my disclaimer, if you will. You know, in all of this, just knowing that nothing I do does any of this. This is not a, and all of my brothers that I'm in community with feel the same way about themselves, and that nothing that we do, don't say my name. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's here's what we're just being available.
Yep.
You know, we're nobody special. You know, us alone, or, you know, we blow it. You know, and look, we're trying to walk in the Spirit, and we still blow it sometimes. You know, I mean, we ain't. You know, look, you walk around and follow us every day, follow me every day. You're gonna see, you know. Some days we get out here with these guys, and there's been times where you know, I didn't pray up, because there's stuff going on in these guys' lives. I mean, inside these guys, and there's stuff happening in the spiritual realm with some of these guys. You know, I mean, there's some dark stuff going on. You know, they're dealing with some of this stuff, and man, my patience and stuff like this, man, it gets real thin sometimes.
You handled it very well today.
You know. So what we're talking about? So we were handling some cows today, right? You know, and
I can see where you got frustrated. I mean, I was sitting there thinking, "No, wait a minute."
yeah.
But I mean, the way you handled those kids was awesome, man.
Yeah.
You put them at ease, because I think they were stressing out. They were scared to death.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you said, "Look." The one kid, you kept saying, "Are you okay?" Or you kept saying, "You're okay. You're okay."
Yeah.
And he said, "Yeah, I'm okay." He said, "No, I'm telling you, it's okay."
Yeah.
And you could almost see the kid go, "Shoo,
Mm-hmm.
okay, it's all right. I'm not in trouble."
Yeah.
Because some of these kids, man, just like what we deal with, where they come from, they've never been able to fail.
Mm-hmm.
Or all they've been told is you're an idiot.
Yeah. Or they're telling themselves that.
Yeah.
You know, like they've gotten, some of them may have gotten an idea, like they're not worthy. You know, because what we're looking at, and just for situational wise, like some of these guys have not, like, mom might be involved, like overly trying to compensate for the dad the dad's not there, or if he is there, he's not present. Like, he's around all the time and you see him, but there's no communication, there's not the poor relationship, he's just not present. Like, he's on his phone or he's on the computer or whatever that it looks like. And so he gets an idea that he's not worthy, you know. And that if he's around some, you know, whatever it is, whether it's trauma or whatever, you know, that looks like, there's wounds, right? So the guy that you're talking about, just the level of I've done something wrong here, and maybe I'm not measuring up, you know. Maybe, and some of this stuff might come from school and things like this, from other kids, you know. I mean, there's some kids are hard on each other, man.
Yeah, you kidding.
You know, I mean, they just are, you know,
Yeah.
and they're just as insecure as the next kid. But if they can make you look at them, you know, this bully thing is, you know, that's real. And so, you know, if he's just like, man, I just can't, you know, like, no, I'm not asking you if you're all right, because I wasn't, you know, you're all right, you know. This isn't, you know.
I'm not asking you. I'm telling you.
Yeah, you're all right. There's nothing that can't be, you know. We can correct some whatever happens here.
The cow's not dead.
Yeah.
We can get it
And
turned
even if he
around.
was,
Yeah.
you know, even if what, like I had one of them hold one of the ones that was out there. He, you know, the sweep that has the handle that comes out. You know, well there's a pipe that sticks out in that. And if a cow goes in that, if it's not open or closed, like and that pipe sticking straight, it can go in the side of that cow, and it went in the side of one of them cows. You know, the last time we worked them. Wow. You know, and she ended up being okay. It just kind of went under her skin, but it ran up under her skin, you know, pretty good. And she ended up backing out. But you know, the thing is, it's like, listen, you know. You gonna be all right, you know. You're gonna be all right, you know. And if you make a mistake, you know, they just need to know. And listen, they need to hear it from a man.
Yeah.
You know, we're not, you know, I'm not trying to convince him of that. I'm telling him, you know. And so those are the pieces that when we start talking about this initiation and then these boys being around men that walk with Jesus, you know, and live this thing out, doesn't mean I'm not going to get frustrated. And look, I tell them, you know, like they get a little brief, you know, before we get going and say, listen, you're going to get your feelings hurt in here. You're going to get yelled at, you know. You might get smacked with a flag or something. You know what I'm saying? But they, and we walk through the whole thing. You know, and they've all walked through it. All those kids have worked with these cows in those working chutes, and so that's the thing. You know, we walked through it, and then I let them know, you know. But listen, if I yell at you right now, and your feelings get hurt, you know, it's just going to be your feelings that got hurt. I'm not walking around. I'm not mad at you, or anything like that. I'm going to correct you and make on the spot corrections, you know, and things like that. But that doesn't mean I don't love you.
Right. Exactly.
You know? And so, you know, when they see these men and they're around these other men and they see the fruits of the Spirit, you know, that's the thing. You know, that being a man is not how much sex you can have, and it's not how much you can drink and all that kind of stuff. It's stepping up, you know, being courageous, you know. Stepping into that, you know, because they're scared to do this stuff, you know, and it's okay, you know, but just get a hold of this thing. I'm gonna keep you as safe as I can. You might get hurt, you know, you might get hurt, you know, it can happen, you know, and it has, you know, they've gotten some minor injuries and gotten kicked and stuff like that, you know, but anyway, you know, that's the thing is you present them with a situation like that and give them an opportunity to be a man and man, but what happens on the other side of it, you know? Just now, listen, I'm just going to tell you, there's a payoff. There's a payoff. Like, I don't need one. I do it anyway because I'm being obedient.
Right.
You know, but I'm just going to tell you, there's a payoff. You know, there's a payoff whenever you're knee to knee with somebody and then they get free. You know, when you're in one of these trainings or whatever it is, a retreat or anything like that, and you're going, you know, you're speaking into their life, you know, and speaking life into them, shining some light. You know, if that guy gets free from anything, there's a payoff. Why? Because there's a kingdom payoff, right?
Exactly.
You know.
Yep.
And man, my desires have changed, you know, for the things that I want, you know, because I love Jesus, and there's been a shift, So the desires of my heart have changed, you know, into something completely different. And all of my prior life, you know, in the working world, as far as the military and all that stuff, has done nothing but prepare me for this walk, doing kingdom work, fighting these battles, fighting these firefights. That's all that's been. Being able to tell my wife that, hey, listen, you know, she spent a lot of time speaking into, like, one, we tell our story, we die to self, right?
Right.
You know, and so, you know, she's done that, and she's spoken into to people's life. Well, she was going to battle, you know, and she had that time, and she was with someone while they were getting free, you know. She helped them, you know, but being able to speak into her life after she did that and didn't really understand what was going on after, because when you're doing that, man, it's taxing. You know, you get some of their blood on you, right? And then you don't really understand. Wait a minute, you know, how do I? She never experienced any of that stuff, and then why? Well, I'm like, hey, that's what happens after combat. You have a little dump there, you know, and it's you've got some blood on you, you know, but it's not your burden, you know. But it's just taxing on you, you know. But her empathy and all that is just strength. Like, there's more of it. Why? Because there's more Jesus there, you know. And but when I do that, and we're able to see and speak that into her, you know. Well, what am I doing? Well, we're dealing with my area of authority. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
You know, and then she begins to understand, and you see, when my kids begin to understand, they see that. Well, Mama, you know, what's going on, you know, and they see that, and they kind of experience that, and they're around that, you know. And if we can provide that for our kids, you know, and provide opportunities for them to kind of see us work through stuff, you know, and then what's their relationships going to be like? What are they going to expect out of their relationships, you know? And that's real important for us, you know, is that we kind of step through this thing with our kids and say, wait a minute, you know, I don't want you to, you know, your grade is not the problem, but you want to hide and not have conflict with someone, you know, that's a problem.
Yeah.
You know, because what I don't want you to do is get in a relationship later on, you be trying to hide and not have this conflict. You see what I mean? You know, the same thing so that's for our own kids, and then the same thing for these guys out here is those situational things that happen. You know, let's have this necessary conflict. Let's deal with this fear that you're facing with these animals out here.
Yep.
You know, let's just step into this stuff and take courage. You know, in all these things, take courage. You know, so.
Brother, that's a lot. We've kept you forever.
I don't even know what time it is.
Don't worry about it.
I don't know if we lost the wife or not.
I don't know either. Should be all right.
Somebody's out there chasing dogs, are they?
Yeah, that's what they do. That's their nighttime gig. Did she leave with her purse? She might have.
I don't know. Oh my goodness, it's 9:30.
Oh yeah. She's headed toward the house.
Yeah, we've been going for right at 3 hours.
Really?
Well, I'm gonna let you get back to what you do. It's been a pleasure, brother.
Man, I tell you, you know, whenever we were talking, when we first started talking here, you know, about 3 hours ago, whatever time that was, you know, we were talking about making that phone, you know, when you got that phone call from me, and there was, I love the way the Lord just takes us and he maps all this stuff out. Like, all this stuff is kind of, you know, he lets us intersect our lives, you know, and we know that there's just more. What he's doing is just so amazing, and that that there's he's orchestrated some things, you know, and arranged for opportunities, you know, moments of truth, if you will, that we would step through, you know, whenever you came and was just in that time, you know.
Yeah, it's perfect timing.
In your life, you know, and trying to, you know, working through some stuff, you know. All those things were, you know, were opportunities that were orchestrated by him. And if we can, one, be aware and act on those opportunities, you know, like that, you know, some of them are we've approached a time where it came time for us to do it. Some of it later on, after we've made some decisions and we've been walking in the Spirit, at some point, you know, we end up in a place where, man, we can hear, you know,
yeah.
and we don't want to miss what the Holy Spirit's prompting us to do, you
right.
know. And if we do miss it, it just grieves us, you know.
That's a fact. It really does.
And but I was watching. I'll say this, and then last thing, and I'd stopped to get some fuel, and I went in to pay. And on my way out, I looked to my right, and there was a guy there, and man, it was pretty cold out. And I could tell the guy might have been, you know, I don't know if it was a drug or alcohol problem, you know, whatever it was. It looked like he was, one, it was cold, but the other, I mean, it looked like he was in some, you know, having some trouble coming off of something. And I thought, man, what do I, you know, like it took me a second. I was trying to think, well, man, I need to go and get him something to eat. Or let me turn around and look for something to get him, you know, like a jacket or something, or maybe I'll go buy him a jacket or something along those lines. You know, this is all happening in just seconds, and I looked to my left, and a guy had gotten out of his truck and was walking over there, taking his jacket off. And gives him this jacket. Now the guy, you know, just hanging around the recovery and stuff like that. The guy looked like he had had a rough time at one point, but he wasn't having a rough time today. He was acting, you know, and he gave that guy his jacket, you know, and then he comes back, you know, and gets in there and something else happened just like right there in that day or at that right around that time. And man, I just thought, I just prayed to say, God, I don't want to miss anything, you know. I want to be used, right? And I talked to another guy that day, and he said, man, maybe it was just God just letting you know that, hey, you know, if you don't, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do anyway. Somebody's gonna do it. And what I wanted to pray then, and what I did pray was just, let me be the one. Let me. Send me. Let me be your guy. And of course I want to be one of those guys, you know. Obedient and walking in the Spirit so I hear and I don't miss.
I'm one of them. I'm glad you didn't miss.
Me too. Me too.
I love you, brother.
I love you too.
Folks, I can't say enough about JJ and Elizabeth and what they're doing here, and more than that, what God's doing here, and they're being obedient in that. And I know that God's going to bring everything that you need for this community, because what's happening in this community is there's more men like me who are coming here from out of state.
Mm-hmm.
This is going out, and I love it that there's something for the men and the women and even the teenagers when they go to these retreats and they come back It's not just an emotional experience. There's somewhere to take that and apply it and build on it. So folks, if you're out there and you're trying to do something like this, you've got to have something for people. When they come forward and they surrender their life, they're dealing with something, something's going on. That's the time to get these people and disciple them. We can't just let them walk out the door and go back into the world because they're going to get hit with a ball bat. We've got to have some accountability. If you want to know more about what JJ and Elizabeth are doing here at the ranch, hit us up in the comments section. I'll get your questions or your info to them. And JJ's not on social media right now, so you're not going to get him there. But we have contact. We've got plenty of people we can get you in touch with him if you'd like to be part of what they're doing here and learn more about it. So if you would, hit that like button, subscribe, and leave us a comment, and we will see you in the next one.